Howdy, HLIB. This is Ms. Kosh. There had been some question on number 31, part D. So we talked about it in the Zoom, but I wanted to go ahead and make a video for you. So here's what we're looking at. We, step one, need to plug in 1 and show that that's a true statement. And we do. It works out pretty nicely. 1 is less than 3/2, so life is good. Then in step 2, we make the assumption that when n equals k, it is a true statement. So as I goes from 1 to k of 1 over I, that'll be less than or equal to k over 2 plus 1. So step 1 and step 2, I mean, occasionally step 1 is tricky, but for the most part, those are really straightforward. The challenge enters in with step 3. So what we have here is the sum of the first k plus 1 terms would be the sum of the first k terms plus the k plus 1th term. So when I come over here and plug in k plus 1, I just get 1 over k plus 1. So then what happens is the sum of the first k terms, we wrote that down in step 2. Well, so this right here, this summation part is going to be less than this part right here. Okay, so we can say, therefore, if this box is less than that box, then we're just adding this on to both of those. Okay, I don't know if all my yellow is making sense for you. But basically, let me get rid of it for a second. Basically, not that, undo. That goes away. Okay, basically what happens is we use what we wrote down in step 2. And so part of this is... it is straight from step 2, and then we're just adding the k plus 1th term. Okay, so then we have this k plus 1 plus 1, I lied. We have k over 2 plus 1 plus 1 over k plus 1. Well, we know that since k has to be an integer, that 1 over k plus 1 has to always be less than or equal to 1/2. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's say we plug in, let k equal 1. That's the smallest positive integer we have. In that case, we have 1 over 1 plus 1 is 1 over 2, which would be equal to 1/2. So we're good. Okay, what happens when k equals 2? Well, then we have 1 over 2 plus 1 is 3. Well, 1/3 is indeed less than 1/2, so we're good. You could pick 1,000 and say, okay, well, 1 over 1,001 is less than 1/2, and so we're good. So we can see here, since k has to be a positive integer, then this statement will be true. So now what I can do is I can take this box right here, I can take this whole thing and say, and that's, this whole thing has to be less than, maybe I could have written it here, hang on, let's clean this up a little bit. I could have said that this whole thing is less than or equal to k over 2 plus 1 plus 1/2. Okay, because this piece right here has to be less than 1/2, so that whole thing has to be less than that. And so then I just said, okay, since this is true right here, then we therefore can conclude that the original summation, I'm here now on this line, that original summation, as the sum as I goes from 1 to k plus 1 of 1 over I, has to be less than k over 2 plus 1 plus 1/2. Now I have a common denominator between these two terms, add those together, and now this, well, back here I could have written a goal. My goal would have been the sum as I goes from 1 to k over k plus 1 of 1 over I would be less than or equal to k plus 1 over 2 plus 1. That's my goal. And that's exactly what shows up right here. Okay, there's a whole lot of pink that's really confusing, and therefore I can conclude what I was trying to prove. So hopefully that was helpful. Do the best you can. You got to practice these. They are tricky.